I want to take you through a developing story related to what's been happening in the Middle East in the last, half an hour or so. A sequence of social media posts coming from the US President Donald Trump on his app, that's the Truth Social app, calling for a complete surrender by the Iranian government. SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease watching all of this from New York. Sherwin is joining us live now. In fact, we're going to get Sherwin back on the line. We will talk, though, if we've got those pictures. Let's get some pictures, actually, of the skyline over Iran and Israel, which we've been watching for the last 5 days. Today is the 5th night of fighting between the two countries. So let's show you what's going on. I'm just waiting to get an indication of where exactly we're looking at. But this appears to be the skyline over Tel Aviv. And we're sitting here because tonight we're expecting further attacks to take place between Tel Aviv and Tehran. It is dark now, but we've seen those skies light up as missiles coming from Tehran are either intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome system or they are, in fact, able to make impact on the ground. 24 people have died in Israel during these strikes. Iran is responding to the initial salvo fired by the Israelis in the early hours of Friday morning. Over 200 people killed in Tehran and other places in attacks on nuclear facilities. Residential areas have also not been spared. I want to go back then to New York, bring back in our correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease watching the latest from the US President Donald Trump, Sherwin, and more saber rattling from him, including a post that basically says it's time for complete surrender by Tehran.
Yeah, Tembakila, we were earlier trying to sort of choreograph what was going on behind closed doors at the White House. You'll remember that Trump dramatically leaving the G7 a summit in Canada overnight, returning to the White House in the early hours of this morning and requesting that his national security team, his national security council, be convened on his arrival in the Situation Room in the White House. And so, we are now getting a better idea from what the president is posting on Truth Social, his social media platform. Let me just go through each post. There were 3 within the last hour that'll give us a better idea here. The first one says, "We now have complete," and the "we" is very instructive here, Tembakile, because this is a United States that has positioned itself as not being party to this conflict. Now the president is using the word "we." We now have complete and total control of the skies of Iran. Iran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived and manufactured stuff. Nobody does it better than the good old USA. That was then quickly followed up by this post. "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding." A reference here to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. "He is an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out, in brackets, kill. At least for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Worth pointing out that over 200 civilians and over 1,400 have been injured by Israeli strikes against Iran, and some 24 civilians and over 600 injuries have been reported by civilians in Israel from the ballistic missile strikes that have hit various areas in Israel. So civilians have been affected on both sides of this conflict. The third post from the president are these 2 words, unconditional surrender. We are surmising that this is a reference to the government of Iran, a call here from President Trump for their complete surrender. So it now appears, given this more muscular posture that you are seeing from the President of the United States, recall that he has been pushing, has been engaged with Iran over 5 iterations of nuclear talks. He has been pushing even since Israel's attack started last Friday, or in the early hours of Saturday morning, for Iran to return to peace talks. But of course, the posture now appears to have changed. We also understand that from the Pentagon that they have moved additional assets into the Middle East. We are now also hearing from news organization Fox News that the US is moving more fighter jets into the region. And of course, overnight, President Trump also on social media saying that everyone in Tehran, the capital of Iran, some 10 million people who live there should evacuate. So you are seeing this mass evacuation a great deal of fear within the population in the capital of Iran, people trying to leave the area, gas shortages, we understand, fuel shortages. I just got off a call with a colleague of mine who works for the BBC Persian service. He's Iranian. He's got people on the ground. He has friends and family on the ground. And he was just in a state of shock, if I'm being honest here. So there is a fear that is permeating the Iranian population. One imagines a fear that is permeating the Israeli population, right? Because of those ballistic missiles. So civilians also always caught up in the mix here when countries go to war. But the big takeaway, I think, from the last hour here in the United States is there is a more muscular posture that is being presented by the President of the United States. So it points to, certainly is indicative of possible greater U.S. military involvement in this conflict.
And Sherwin, thank you very much for that. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, watching the latest developments around the tensions in the Middle East, the war between Israel and Iran. We'll come back to you, Sherwin, throughout the evening as these developments happen, because everyone is waiting to see if those posts by Donald Trump are perhaps a build-up to a direct involvement, military involvement by the Americans in aid of Israel. As Sherwin was pointing out, Donald Trump now making reference to we when he talks about having control of Iran's skies. So it's a no-fly zone at the moment. People are unable to fly in and out of Tehran. The same in Israel, because much of what's going on is happening mid-air. So some of these rockets, just to give you an example, if the sides are firing at each other, would have to travel quite a mile, cross over other sovereign territory in the form of Jordan, for instance. And Jordan, over the weekend, was in a spot of bother, if you will, because it also intercepted some of those rockets. And some in the Middle East were saying that wasn't the brotherly thing to do, saying it is siding with Israel.